أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسُ قَالُوا أَنُؤْمِنُ كَمَا آمَنَ السُّفَهَاءُ أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ السُّفَهَاءُ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ اللَّهُ يَسْتَهْزِئُ بِهِمْ وَيَمُدُّهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون أو كصيب من السماء فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق يجعلون أصابعهم في آذانهم من الصواعق حذر الموت والله محيط بالكافرين يكاد البرق يخطف أبصارهم كلما أضاء لهم مشوا فيه وإذا أظلم عليهم قاموا ولو شاء الله لذهب بسمعهم وأبصارهم إن الله على كل شيء قدير. And among men there are some who say, we believe in Allah and in the last day, yet they are no believers. They try to deceive Allah and those who believe when they are deceiving none but their own selves, and they are not aware. In their hearts there is a melody, so Allah has made them grow in their melody, and for them there lies a grievous punishment, for they have been lying. And when it is said to them, do not spread disorder on the earth, they say, we are nothing but reformers. Beware, it is in fact they who spread disorder, but they are not aware. And when it is said to them, believe as people have believed, they say, shall we believe as fools believe? Beware, it is in fact they who are the fools, but they do not know. And when they meet those who believe, they say, we have entered faith, but when they are alone with their shaitans, they say, indeed, we are with you, we were only mocking. It is Allah who mocks them and lets them go on wandering blindly in their rebellion. These are the people who have bought error at the price of guidance. So their trade has brought no gain, nor have they found guidance. Their case is as if a man kindles a fire, and when it illuminates everything around him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away their lights and leaves them in layers of darkness. They see nothing, deaf, dumb, and blind. They shall not return. Or it is like a rainstorm from the sky carrying darkness, thunder, and lightning. They thrust their fingers in their ears against thunderclaps for the fear of death. And Allah encompasses the disbelievers, and lighting all but snatches away their eyes. Every time a flash gives them light, they walk by it, and when darkness grows upon them, they stand still. And if Allah willed, He would certainly take away their hearing and their eye. Surely Allah is powerful over everything. As we have seen, the Surah Al-Baqarah opens with the declaration that the Holy Quran is beyond all doubt. The first 20 verses of the Surah delineate the features of those who believe in the Holy Quran and those who do not. The first 5 dealing with the former, under the title of Al-Muttaqun, the God-fearing. The next 2 with those disbelievers who were quite open and violent in their hostility. That is Al-Kafirun, the disbelievers or the infidels. And the following 13 with those crafty disbelievers who claim to be Muslims but in reality were not so. This second variety of the disbelievers have received from the Holy Quran the name of Al-Munafiqun, the hypocrites. Of these 13 verses, the first 2 define the characteristic behavior of the hypocrites thus: وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And among men there are some who say, we believe in Allah and in the last day. Yet there are no believers. They try to deceive Allah and those who believe, when they are deceiving none but their own selves, and they are not aware. These verses expose their claim to be Muslims as false and deceitful, and show that they are only trying to be clever. Obviously, no one can deceive Allah. Probably they themselves could not have had such a delusion. But the Holy Quran equates, in a way, the attempt to deceive the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims with the desire to deceive Allah Himself. Such a desire, the Holy Quran points out, can have only one consequence. They end up by deceiving no one but themselves. For Allah Himself cannot possibly be deceived, and divine revelation protects the Holy Prophet ﷺ from all trickery and deceit, so that the hypocrites themselves will have to bear in the other world as well as in this, the punishment for their presumptuousness. The third verse indicates why the hypocrites behave so foolishly and why they fail to see the folly of their course. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. In their hearts there is a malady, so Allah has made them grow in their malady. Now, illness or disease in the general medical sense is a state in which a man has lost the balanced proportion of the elements within him necessary to keep him healthy, so that his body can no longer function properly, which may finally lead to his total destruction. In the terminology of the Holy Quran and Hadith, the word disease is also implied to certain mental or psychic states we are using two terms in the original and more comprehensive sense, which hinder men from attaining any degree of spiritual perfection, for they gradually deprive him of the ability to perform good deeds, and even of ordinary human decency, till he meets with his spiritual death. The great spiritual master Junaid of Baghdad had said that just as the diseases of the body arise from an imbalance among the four humors, the diseases of the heart arise from a surrender to one's physical desires. According to the present verse, the disease hidden in their hearts is unbelief and rejection of the truth, which is as much a physical sickness as a spiritual one. It is all too obvious that being ungrateful to one's creator and nourisher and going against his commandments is to be spiritually sick. Moreover, to keep this disbelief concealed for the sake of petty worldly gains and not to have the courage to speak out one's mind is no less a disease of the soul. Hypocrisy is a physical disease too, insofar as the hypocrite is always shuddering for fear of being exposed. Jealousy being a necessary ingredient of hypocrisy, he cannot bear to see the Muslims growing stronger in the world, and yet the poor hypocrite cannot even have the satisfaction of unburdening his heart of the venom. No wonder that all this tension should express itself in physical ailment. As for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making them grow in their malady, it means that they are jealous of the growing strength of Muslims, but it is Allah's will to make the physician of the Muslims even stronger, and as they can see for themselves, which feeds their bile and keeps the disease of their hearts growing. The fourth and the fifth expose the sophistry of the hypocrites. Their activities threaten to produce a general chaos and disorder, and yet, in their malady-mouthed way, they pretended to be men of goodwill and to be serving the cause of peace and order. The Holy Quran makes it clear that oral claims alone do not decide the question whether one is working for order or disorder. For what thief would call himself a thief? It depends on what one does, not on one say. It depends on what one does, not on what one say. If a man's activities do result in mischief, he will be called a mischief maker, even if he had no such intention. These two verses thus describe the state of their insensitivity and ignorance. They regard their defect as merits. The sixth verse shows the other aspect of the depravity, the merit of others, that is, the unalloyed faith of the Muslims. Changes into a defect and even becomes contemptible in their eyes. The explanation by translator written over here is, as for the hypocrites declaring openly that they were not prepared to believe as others did believe, and as for their dubbing the Muslims as fools, it is obvious that they could have been so outspoken only before the poor among the Muslims. Otherwise, they used to be very careful about keeping their disbelief concealed. Now we continue again. This verse also places before the hypocrites a criterion of true faith, Iman. Aminu kama amanan nas. Believe as people have believed. According to the consensus of commentators, the Arabic word nas, people, in this verse refers to the blessed companions of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because it is just these people who had embraced the faith and had accepted the Holy Quran as the word of Allah while it was being revealed. So the verse indicates that the only kind of Iman, faith, acceptable to Allah is the one which should be similar to that of the blessed companions, and that the Iman of others would be worthy of the name only when they believe in the same things in the same way as the companions did. In other words, the Iman of the companions is a touchstone for testing the Iman of all other Muslims. Any belief or deed which departs from their faith and practice, however, pleasing in its looks or good in its intention, is not valid according to the Sharia. There is a consensus of commentators on this position. One should also notice that the hypocrites used to call the blessed companions fools, sufaha. This has always been the way of those who go astray. Anyone who tries to show them the right path is, in their eyes, ignorant and stupid. But who could, the Holy Quran points out, be more stupid than the man who refuses to see clear signs? In the 7th verse, we see the double-facedness and trickery of the hypocrites. In the company of the Muslims, they would vociferously declare their faith in Islam, but going back to their own people would reassure them they had never left the way of their ancestors and had been meeting the Muslims only to make fun of them. The 8th verse is a comment on this attitude of a complacency and self-congratulation on the part of the hypocrites. They are mightily pleased with themselves in the belief that they can so easily make a fool of the Muslims and get away with it, while they are, in fact, only making a fool of themselves. For Allah has, in His forbearance and mercy, given them a long rope. But this is a provision for their being thrown into ridicule. It took place like this. Since the hypocrites saw no apparent signs of divine punishment descending on themselves, they were encouraged in their complacency and rebellion, so that the cup of their iniquity was full. And one day they were caught. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acted like this in response of their mockery, so the Holy Quran describes this divine action too as a mockery on the part of Allah. The 9th verse shows the basic denseness of the hypocrites, how they failed to make use of the ordinary sense of discrimination. They had grown up in a pagan society and knew very well what the way of the infidels was. Now they had become familiar enough with Islam too and could easily see the difference, but in their greed and for the sake of petty worldly profit, they still chose disbelief as against Islam and bartered away something as invaluable as Iman, faith, for something as worthless and even harmful as kufr, infidelity. In giving the name of trade or commerce to this action, the Holy Quran suggests these worldly wise men had no understanding even of the art of trading. The last 4 verses bring out the miserable plight of the hypocrites with the help of 2 extended similes. The choice of 2 examples is meant to divide the hypocrites into 2 kinds of men. On the one hand were those in whom disbelief had taken deep roots, so that they had little inclination towards Islam, but pretended to be Muslims for worldly motives. The Holy Quran compares them to the man who, having found light, again loses it and is left in darkness. On the other hand were those who did recognize the truth of Islam and sometimes wished to be genuine Muslims, but worldly interests would not allow them to do so, and they remained in a perpetual state of hesitation and doubt. They have been likened to the man caught in a thunderstorm who moved forward a step or two when there is a flash of lightning, but when it is over, again get stuck. In the course of these parables, the hypocrites have also been warned that they are not beyond the power of Allah, and that He can, as and when He likes, take away their sight and hearing and even destroy them.